You know what the hardest part of the video is? The introduction. I need to bring up a topic and make it sound interesting so people don't instantly turn off the video, and this is quite difficult sometimes. So, you know what? I'm going to let Gandalf do the introduction to this video. "I do not know," answered Gandalf, "but the arms were all guided by one purpose. Something has crept or been driven out of the dark waters under the mountain. There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world. We fought far under the living earth, where time is not counted. Ever he clutched me, and ever I hewed him, till at last he fled into dark tunnels. They were not made by Durin's folk, Gimli, son of Gloin. Far, far below the deepest delving of the dwarves, the world is gnawed by nameless things. Even Sauron knows them not. They are older than he. Now I have walked there, but I will bring no report to darken the light of day. In that despair, my enemy was my only hope, and I pursued him, clutching at his heel. Thus he brought me back, at last, to the secret ways of Khazad-dûm. Too well he knew them all. Ever up now we went, until we came to the endless stair." These are the only two direct references to nameless things in The Lord of the Rings, but they have been enough to leave fans of Tolkien's work fascinated by the concept. The idea of evil creatures lurking in the depths of the world, so horrific that Gandalf doesn't even want to talk about them, so mysterious that they don't even have names and are unknown to almost everyone who lives in the world above them, and so ancient that they are even older than Sauron himself. Our only glimpse of one of these creatures is the tentacled monstrosity that is the Watcher in the Water, who many believe to be one of the Nameless Things. So what's the deal with the Nameless Things? Where did they come from, and why do they exist? This is where the mystery starts. We literally don't know. There's so little information about them that it's hard to be certain, but we can make guesses knowing what we know about Tolkien's universe. You see, living creatures in Arda usually fall neatly into two categories. Usually, I stress. They were either created by Eru Ilúvatar or by one of the Valar with his approval: men, elves, dwarves, ents, animals, trees. The second category is that they were living creatures that were twisted or bred by Morgoth until they became something new. Orcs, trolls, wargs, dragons, vampire bats. There's other potential theories too, so let's get into it. Who created the Nameless Things, and why? The first possible answer is the laziest answer to everything. God did it. Yes, Ilúvatar might have created the Nameless Things, just as he created or gave approval to most other things in Arda. This seems unlikely at first mention. Why would a somewhat benevolent god create such seemingly unredeemably malevolent creatures that hide in the bowels of the world? The joke answer would be, because it was funny. But the serious answer is a little more complex than you might think. The Nameless Things may have once served a different purpose, and they may have been completely different creatures at the dawn of time. But by the time Gandalf encountered them late in the Third Age, they may have willingly fallen into evil or perhaps been corrupted by another power such as Morgoth. Remember, Ilúvatar didn't create perfect creatures. One of the first beings he ever created was a monumental failure, so there's no real reason why the Nameless Things can't be the same. The second answer is, Morgoth created them. At first glance, there's a few flaws with this theory, but I'll explain. Only Ilúvatar had the Flame Imperishable, the ability to create living creatures with free will, but the Valar, given they had the skill, could create living creatures. An example of this is Aule when he created the first 7 dwarves. But without Ilúvatar's blessings, these creatures would effectively just be automatons lacking sapience, an animalistic extension of the person who created them. Therefore, Morgoth may have attempted to create his own living creatures, a desire which originally drove him towards evil. This attempt failed, and he instead created the Nameless Things. Being mindless drones, these creatures would have disappointed Morgoth, and he might have buried them, literally and figuratively. But a potential flaw with this theory is that these creatures were older and unknown to Sauron. Therefore, surely he would have known about them if Morgoth created them, given he was Morgoth's foremost servant. My answer to this is that we don't have a timeline of when the specific Ainur came to Arda, and it's possible Morgoth created these creatures before he corrupted Sauron into his service, and never revealed them to him. If Sauron entered Ea, the universe, after Morgoth created the Nameless Things, they would also technically be older than him, as time does not exist outside the universe. There are a few other theories about the Nameless Things that might be entertained, and they draw reference to two other creatures in Tolkien's universe that have or have had unexplained origins, Ungoliant and the legendary Tom Bombadil. In Tolkien's older works, Ungoliant is a primeval spirit called Moru that is said to have come from the outer darkness, the void, and that not even the Vala knew of her origin. In other words, she could have been a physical manifestation of the void itself, hence why she can even consume light. Given that Tolkien once entertained this concept, it could be said that the Nameless Things were also manifestations of the void that found their way onto Arda. A similarity is that Ungoliant had an insatiable hunger, and when Gandalf describes the Nameless Things, he does mention that they're gnawing on the world. But this could just be a metaphor. But it should be said that Moru was introduced in the 1920s and was never mentioned again, and then Tolkien's origin story for Ungoliant changed significantly. So while the idea that the Nameless Things were some sort of malevolent void creatures is kind of cool, it's also very unlikely given Tolkien seems to have abandoned that concept. The other theory relates to Tom Bombadil. Now, no one knows what Tom Bombadil is or where he came from, and anyone that tells you that they do know is wrong unless it's Tolkien himself, and if that's the case, I have other questions. But my favourite theory for Tom Bombadil is that he is some sort of powerful primeval spirit of nature, a very extension of Arda itself, an aborigine as Tolkien personally put it. He has dwelt in Arda from the very beginning, before even Morgoth arrived. Perhaps not as a conscious creation of Iluvatar, but perhaps more as a glitch or a side effect of creation. Unexplainable, but there. Perhaps the Nameless Things are the same. Aborigine spirits, but unlike Tom Bombadil, they are extensions of darkness, hence why they can only be found in the deepest places of the world where there is no light to find. And whereas nature is considered to be a neutral or sometimes even good concept, darkness is often associated with evil, hence why the Nameless Things are evil as well. But while possible, this theory is probably a little far-fetched. So, there you have it, the potential origins of the Nameless Things, and I think we've done pretty well considering there's like only a couple of lines that mention them in the entire Legendarium. As per usual, the mystery is not solved, nor will it ever be, but I hope I've clarified it a little bit. Let me know what theory you think is more likely, and feel free to post theories of your own. Personally, I think the second theory, the one where Morgoth created them, is the most likely, but that doesn't mean it's true. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it or at least found it interesting. If you have any other mysteries you want me to make a video about, post it in the comments, unless it's about the Entwives. They're burned, dead, get over it. Thank you to my patrons, Andrew Welch, MNCB10, one day I'm just going to remember that one off by heart, Barbosa, Patricia, Paul Leone, Mo L, Moshtaba Rowe, Carrot Ifson, and Harry Everett. Your support is much appreciated from the bottom of my heart. Cheers, farewell, and remember, if you discover something new, don't make the mistake of not naming it, because you have naming rights. Don't miss that opportunity.